10 million when they're 21 and another 8 million to be shared between them when they're 40. So the reason why she may not have a lot of money today is because it's being shunted to one side to avoid inheritance tax.
Every year, the Queen Mother would leave her private Scottish home to greet the family on their way to Balmoral. They all adore her, but have not been able to control her massive spending.
I do think that the royal family, who have to pick up the bills after all for the Queen Mother, do slightly worry that she keeps on the central heating at her house, the Castle of May in the north of Scotland, all year round. And she only visits it from time to time, but in order to be able to make sure that the woodwork doesn't contract or that, that nasty damp stains appear anywhere, she will keep that central heating on. The bills are colossal.
The Queen Mother has often spent her birthday here at Clarence House, one of her 4 residences, each lavishly furnished and expensively maintained.
I think the Queen Mother is wonderfully extravagant. She's living in a different age. She is an Edwardian, and she lives in an Edwardian way. She has more servants than any other member of the royal family. She invites people to lunch at Clarence House and says, we'll have a little picnic, and you will go out on the lawns, and there will be an array of silver and gold and plate on the table. There will be footmen behind every chair, and you will be served the finest wines and champagne. And that to her is a picnic.
While the Queen is frugal, her mother sees no reason to change her habits. At 99, life is for living.
The Queen Mother is always the life and soul of the party wherever she is. She just makes things go. She likes to have people playing the piano and singing, and when she's racing, her enthusiasm is always there. She's planned with her racing manager all the mating of her horses up to the year 2003, so I think she intends to be around for a while yet.
This is her life and her century.
She was called the fairy tale princess when she married the future King of England in 1981. The demure nursery school assistant blossomed into a radiant beauty, became the most photographed woman in the world. But she used that fame to lighten the burden of others and was loved by millions of people who never met her. She personified the humanity and hopes of a generation, and in death, she became known as the People's Princess. Diana was born into an immensely grand and long-established family with a stately home and extensive acres in Northamptonshire and strong royal connections. Her father was Viscount Althorp, who later assumed the family title and became the 8th Earl Spencer. Born on the 1st of July 1961, Lady Diana Spencer was brought up at Park House, a residence on the Queen's estate at Sandringham. Her childhood there was idyllic. Her parents had married in 1954. As a little girl, she loved to study these pictures, but the marriage did not last. Her mother walked out on the family when Diana was 6 years old, and she was heartbroken by her mother's defection. It left a deep and lasting scar.
Good morning, everyone.
She was packed off to boarding school and was seriously homesick. She did not excel in class, but compensated for a poor academic performance with her swimming. She won several prizes. She also developed a love of tap dancing and ballet, but grew too tall to contemplate a professional career.
Diana had been very affected by her parents' separation. Her father remarried a woman that none of them, particularly Diana, liked. So it was a very unhappy child in their respect.
She was being tugged back and forth, and well, her two elder sisters were at boarding school, and her brother was so young that a lot of it washed over his head. This did not happen with Diana. Diana was young enough to be at home and old enough to absorb all of the destructive lessons.
After a brief spell at a Swiss finishing school, Diana moved to London and shared a flat with 3 girlfriends. She adored children and secured a job as a nursery school assistant.
I wanted to teach children, and they said, why not come along? So I first started off doing afternoons, and then I took over the mornings and did whole days. But I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after American baby boy, which nobody seems to realise. It was very special to me.
Diana was like many a young girl about town. She loved fashion and small supper parties. There were no boyfriends and no talk of romance. She led a simple, carefree existence. But that was about to change. A couple of years earlier, she had met Prince Charles, one of the world's most eligible bachelors. Charles's grandmother, the Queen Mother, believed the shy and innocent Lady Diana would make an ideal bride for the future King of England, and she fostered their relationship. In London, Diana was besieged by photographers and reporters as rumors of a royal romance circulated.
How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you.
Well, it is, naturally.
You're coping with it all right, though. You seem to be doing very well.
Well, I'm still around.
The rumors grew in strength, and the press became more persistent. For Diana, it was a foretaste of things to come.
Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
I'm not going to say anything, I'm afraid.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
And they didn't. The engagement between Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer was announced in February 1981, and the bride-to-be faced her first formal photo call.
The first photograph you've actually had with us together.
She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever photographed, and she just glowed. And when she smiled, lit up the picture. You knew you had a wonderful picture. And when she looked down your lens, and those eyes always made up properly, always beautiful. They were just sensational pictures. You just couldn't afford to miss anything she did.
Good. Into this lens, please. Now, there, all honey.
What do you think we've got in common?
Sense of humour. Every outdoor activity, except I don't ride.
So remember did that.
Lots of things, really.
What about you, sir?
No, I think certainly, I mean, all sorts of things. Certainly a sort of love of the outdoors, and she's a very energetic character as well, which is very encouraging. And music and interests like that, and skiing.
Can you find the words to sum up how you feel today, both of you?
Difficult to find the right sort of word, isn't it, really? Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Well, it
you
obviously
can put your own
means,
interpretation.
Obviously means two very happy people.
Yes.
Once again, congratulations.
Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's very kind.
It was a very revealing moment, I think, the engagement interview, when they were asked, quite rightly, if they were in love. She said, of course, which is interesting looking back at her instinct of public relations, which we've seen since was already functioning then at that very young age. Charles, in his ponderous way, said, whatever love is. That now seems very significant, because I don't think he ever was in love with her. I think he entered into this marriage in an entirely cynical frame of mind. We now know that he had this mistress, Mrs. Parker Bowles, who he'd already had an affair with, continued during the marriage. When Prince Charles started to take an interest in her, I think she genuinely did fall in love with him, as what 17-year-old wouldn't if the 30-year-old future King of England threw himself at your feet. I think any girl would have fallen in love with the idea of Charles, the idea of his future, the idea of their future together, whatever he himself was actually like. And there were many aspects of him that were very appealing. He promised her a happy family life.
As far as the public was concerned, it was a match made in heaven. And on the 29th of July 1981, the stage was set for the wedding of the century at St. Paul's Cathedral in London.
Prince Charles, before the wedding, could have been involved with three separate women. Amanda Knatchbull, the granddaughter of Earl Mountbatten, Anna Wallace, the daughter of a Scottish landowner, and the Princess of Wales, Lady Diana Spencer. And each one of those could have been a royal bride. And he, in his public pronouncements, said that he wasn't looking for somebody to be in love with, but he was looking for a companion, a friend who would and really be able to help him in a very difficult job.
It was a fairy story, because the whole thing up to the wedding, you know, that she was so innocent, so young, and kind of, you know, not used to all this glitz and glamour and stuff, and then suddenly, you know, she was going to marry this good-looking prince, and it was just fantastic. I'm going to get goosebumps just thinking about it. It was the most incredible time for all of us.
Diana's Emmanuel designed dress brought gasps of admiration. It symbolized everything about a royal match that had captivated the world.
It's just like designing for any other bride, except that you had to keep in the back of your mind the fact that there's, I don't know how many billions of people were going to be watching. And, you know, they could see the nerves and everything, and it was those imperfections that showed that she is a human being, that she was living a fairy story.
Diana was the first English woman to marry an heir to the throne for over 300 years. she was just 19 years old, an English rose, and the royal family rejoiced.
I, Diana Frances,
I, Diana Frances,
take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George,
take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George,
to my wedded husband,
to my wedded husband,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward,
from this day forward,
according to God's holy law,
according to God's holy law,
and thereto I give thee my troth.
and thereto I give thee my troth.
Here is the stuff of which fairy tales are made. The prince and princess on their wedding day.
Across the globe, 1,000 million people tuned into the royal wedding. In the course of the day, the shy nursery school assistant was catapulted to the status of international superstar. The newlyweds began their honeymoon in Gibraltar before cruising the Mediterranean on the royal yacht Britannia. But all was not well. Diana suffered a recurrence of bulimia, the eating disorder.
Bulimia is something she'd had in her teens before she got married, but the consensus, I think, is that it's one of those things that if the person is happy and fulfilled, then it goes away. And it's always got the potential to come back if that person's life goes wrong for any reason. It was after Diana had, for instance, on their honeymoon, discovered photographs of Camilla fluttering out of Charles's diary, Charles wearing cufflinks that Camilla had given him in the early weeks of their marriage. What kind of a start is that to a marriage? And it's not surprising that the bulimia quite swiftly came back.
In reality, the royal couple were emotionally and intellectually incompatible. There was a 12-year age gap, and their interests differed widely. But on their return from the honeymoon, Diana gave no hint of her waning romantic illusions.
Madam, how are you enjoying married life?
Highly recommend.
How do you like Balmoral as a place?
I think Diana, in many ways, was probably quite a difficult girl to be married to. But let's not forget, A, that she was very young, B, that she got no help at all in this extraordinary change of life.
On the surface, at least, the early days of Diana's marriage appeared happy and contented. The royal couple's first official tour was to the Principality of Wales. Shy Di was an instant hit. She had an easy and open manner, and the crowds loved it. The young princess made her first faltering attempt at speech-making, which she always found difficult.
I am extremely grateful to you, Lord Mayor, and to the City Council, and to the City of Cardiff, for granting me the freedom of the city. I realise it is a very great honour, and I am most grateful. I would like to try to express my thanks to you in Welsh, also. Mae'n blesor cael dod e Gymru, hoffwn ddod eto yn fuan. Diolch yn fawr.
But Diana was struggling to come to terms with the restrictions of court life. Haunted by the rapidly unraveling relationship with her husband, the picture postcard princess felt isolated and increasingly desperate. The birth of Prince William in June 1982 11 months after the royal wedding, set the seal on what seemed a fairy tale marriage.
May we see your son, Your Royal Highness?
Will's arrival was a cause for celebration throughout the land. In reality, Diana suffered badly from pre- and postnatal depression and continuing bouts of bulimia that reduced her to a deeply disturbed state. She later confessed to attempts at self-mutilation. Nevertheless, the birth of a second in line to the throne gave both parents great joy and brought a new focus to Diana's life. She was determined that her young son would know the close love and attention she'd been starved of in her own childhood. In 1983, Diana accompanied her husband on their first overseas tour to Australia. But in a break with royal protocol, she insisted that baby came too. It was a populist stance that instantly endeared the young princess to an adoring Australian public.
Now for all of our students on air today, good morning, girls and boys.
They were bowled over by her openness and informality.
Does Prince William have a favourite toy?
Jamie, he loves his koala bear he's got. But he hasn't got anything particular. He just likes something with a bit of noise.
Plastic whale which throws things out the top.
He got a plastic whale that throws things out the top, little balls.
The newlyweds were perfectly in step and enchanted everyone around them. The royal match appeared flawless.
That was a real love trip every day, and they just used to hold hands, and he was very tactile, and he would always be touching her and making sure she was comfortable, and I remember he would reassure her, and he would hold her hand and smile at her and say, "You're doing a great job, darling," and that was the most wonderful, wonderful trip.
The rapturous reception was repeated a few weeks later in British Columbia, Canada. Everybody wanted to embrace the beautiful princess, and Di mania was born.
It's just so beautiful. I'm just so privileged. I can't believe I did that.
Ironically, it was her overwhelming popularity that placed a further strain on her relations with Charles.
I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had two wives. To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
He became jealous that she was more popular than him. If they arrived somewhere together and they went to separate sides of the crowd, the side that he went to would groan. Now, that would be difficult for any of us to handle, but he didn't handle that very well, and that, within the marriage, gave her a little bit more power, a little bit more self-confidence.
That growing self-confidence showed in every aspect of her life. The shy young girl who first stepped onto the public stage and into the glare of international publicity had little fashion sense. That changed rapidly.
She did look like a county girl. You could tell that she was sort of, trying to work out what the style was. She knew that there was a style. I think she had an idea that she wanted this glamorous image, which is what she was very good at and is what she portrayed.
She did look like a nursery school teacher. All the photographs of her in the billowing skirts and sort of slightly transparent and very innocent, and that's what she was like. And when she came into us, she was very much like that, and she was looking for a dress for her first big occasion out with Prince Charles, and I think it was at the Guildhall. And she saw a black dress hanging there, and she decided to wear that, and from that day on, I mean, she was a fashion icon.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
The sketches were marvellous. Shall we just have you got lots of material in there?
Yeah.
She'd say, look, I'm going on this tour and I'll need to be covered up, and, she'd tell us the restrictions that were imposed by the different cultures and things. And then we'd just get on with it, and we knew the colours that she liked and the looks by then. So we would just come up with, like, tons of drawings.
It's a difficult one, isn't this because I've got to hide my elbows, 3/4 length in hem and a sort of cruel round neck.
So we would lay them all out on the floor, and she'd be down there on the floor with us, sorting through it all. And it was great, real collaboration.
So, I think we might avoid the spots.
Yeah, okay. Remove those. I think she was aware of the importance of being seen, because people come along, they want to see the princess, and they expected her to stand out in a crowd. And so we used a lot of emerald greens and pinks, all those kind of colours, and they look great on her. She got the right skin colour and hair, and she looked great.
I quite like what you've done there.
Just like a sort of...
You're a top knot?
Like a band. Yes, I'd
Yeah.
love to
Really?
wear that.
Really?
Could I do it with my mop?
Yes.
We could tempt it.
Well, that's easy. Well, we can do that.
Diana became intrigued by the world of high fashion and was a swift learner. She was rapidly developing her own sense of style. With her own natural good looks, she began to fulfill the fantasy role of princess as no other British royal had done before her.
She's very, very soon got out of that sort of little girl thing of the early 80s around the marriage. And, give her 5 years, given her 4 years, 5 years, she was looking like a sort of a Hollywood actress.
But the fashion-conscious Di was equally vigorous in undertaking enormous amounts of charity work. It became one of the central pillars of her life.
Will my hubby be down from Scotland then? Because I quite like to go with him.
Yes.
Will he be down or will it be on my
I don't
own?
think he will. I think he'll still be. He'll still be
Still
up in Scotland. Yes.
Do you think it's all right to go on my own, something like this? Because it's quite a
think
big occasion.
It's a big occasion, but it is for your charity.
Is it going to be for birth?
No, Help the Aged. Help the Aged. You attended.
As if to fill the emotional void in her marriage, she played an increasingly important part in attracting publicity and money for uncomfortable causes such as leprosy, the homeless and the aged.
Working for Help the Aged as our patron, she did more to raise the profile of older people, both in the tragic circumstances, frailty and vulnerability, as well as in the joyous circumstances. She could celebrate older people's lives and loved to hear their stories.
We're always kneeling on things like this, wasn't there?
Yes, just backing them. I didn't
What do you
actually.
actually stuff it with? What do you put
Well,
inside?
there's sort of. Show you this one. Oh, when you laid it back in it was soft. Yes.
It's not a lot of tights going in there.
No.
People would come up to me beforehand and they say, oh, we've only got a couple of minutes to meet her. I really don't think that's enough, and, I think perhaps we ought to be meeting her for longer. And I always used to say, it's absolutely fine, because I knew what they didn't know, which was that at the end of the time they'd met her, they'd come back to me and say, she spoke to me for hours.
And were you in a motorbike accident?
It was a driving accident. Dived into water while I was too shallow.
So how long do they work you in here for in the morning? Long enough, I suppose.
Long enough, yeah.
Were you able to sleep in the afternoon?
She had that ability to make people feel included and to make other people the centre of attention. And actually that's a special gift, and not many people have it. And she had it in enormous abundance.
Fault of their own, obviously, so we're parents to them as well.
You're building extensions on your
we are.
All these people.
We just as a happy family, I mean, I was one of 9, so we was used to sharing, yeah. We was used to sharing,
As a member of the British royal family, Princess Diana's daily duties encompassed almost every conceivable situation. Despite the many problems she faced in her personal life, she tackled each official engagement with grace and aplomb. Wherever she went, she seemed to light up the lives of those around her.
Who's that?
I thought you might ask that one.
Who's that? Who does she belong to? Yours.
She would bring, even to the most formal occasions, a sense of informality and fun. Everyone who met her spoke of that magic touch and her ability to affect the lives of ordinary people.
And then onto the parade ground. That takes about a minute.
How many times do you practice this? Yeah, I'll fit a thing on it.
I think that's very good.
I think that's all right.
Yes, I think it's absolutely.
You can't really say much else, can you? It's lovely, thank you very much. I'm proud.
By 1984, Diana was pregnant again, and the royal couple enjoyed the happiest period of their married life. A short while later, on September the 15th, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, Prince Harry was born. But what should have been a joyous occasion for both Charles and Diana quickly turned sour.
After Prince Harry was born, she said to her friends, he looked at Harry, he expected to have a girl, he wanted a girl, and he said, oh, it's a boy, and it's got red hair. Red hair is a Spencer characteristic. So she says herself that something inside died on that day, on the day that Harry was born, and from that moment onwards, her staff, her friends, and all those around her could feel the chill surrounding Charles and Diana.
Diana was concerned that the sorry state of her marriage should not affect the lives of her sons. Memories of her own unhappy childhood reinforced her determination to become the best mother in the world. With typical tenacity, she made the young princes the center of her life.
Mine, can I lead him, please? Will you promise to walk slowly? That's much better. Nice and slowly. That's better for Harry. Good boy.
Her life was her son's. They meant really everything to her, and she had a very close relationship with them both. She really has guided them through so much and prepared William certainly for the role ahead of him. And I think he will miss her more than words can possibly say. She wanted them to be in touch. That for her was the most important thing.